Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA Karen stories. In this video, my psycho neighbor spent decades trying to steal my family's land, and when I inherited it, this guy literally started his own HOA just to torment me. But here is where it gets absolutely insane. He built an entire road straight through my property and then had the audacity to sue me when I tried to stop him. Let's dive right into the video. Today's XXL mega story starts like this. Hello everyone, I want to both complain about an issue I am having with my neighbor and maybe also get some advice about it. My family has had a long history with my neighbor and that whole family. The land originally was owned by my parents and I grew up there. Even as a teenager, I knew to steer clear from that family because not only were these parents insane, but the small children were menaces too. What I didn't know until I was a bit older was that one reason for the feud was that the neighbor wanted our land. I don't know the exact reason, but I think it was him wanting more land so when his kids grew up they could live there and just have one huge mega property. My father had been harassed by neighbor for years, all in an attempt to be able to get the house, sending him lowball offers claiming they are more than fair. He never threatened my dad directly, but instead made vague threats about taking the money when it was offered because next time the offer could be for a piece of destroyed property and burned down house instead. He tried and almost succeeded in making my parents so miserable they considered selling the house and moving. When they tried doing that, he made sure to sabotage any potential buyers. He wanted to make it seem like the worst place to live, and my parents gave up even selling the place because they were not going to get a good deal. Neighbor was set on making sure he not only got the house but not paying a lot for it as well. I think part of the problem is that neighbor has a lot of influence in the area and got away with these petty things since they were not really crimes. Neighbor was actually wealthy and was friends with people in politics and other fancy high positions that he would brag about. He donated large amounts of money to charity, but only very publicly to make sure people saw and assumed that he was a good person. The perfect mask of a good man when underneath the real evil was. When my parents died and I inherited the house and the land that it was on, I did not have a house, so I wanted to move in and keep it in the family. My neighbor must have heard about it because I started getting calls from him giving me offers on the house and not even pretending to be sorry that my mom had passed away. And by the way, my dad died a few years back and he harassed my mom the same way. He started telling me how he knew a lot of powerful people in the government and it would be wise to invest in letting him buy the house. He seemed to be pretending to be nice and acting like he was doing me a favor because being a homeowner was so difficult. I told him I was not interested in selling the house and I saw the side of him that I knew my parents had seen before. He told me that I did not have the ability to manage a property and he knew my type. He was calling me lazy and saying how I would ruin the property and my parents would be so disappointed that I didn't sell because it would have been what they wanted. Finally, he left me alone with the last words being that I would regret making the decision not to sell to him. Further telling me that in a month I would be begging him to take the property off my hands. I did not know what he meant by that, but I did a little while after. He seemed to have all the time in the world to do everything he could to subtly harass me. At night, I would hear a noise and see that he left a lawnmower or a leaf blower running but not being used all night as close to my window as he could. I would find the smallest hints of property damage like tufts of grass that were ripped out in perfectly clean circles, or mud that was obviously thrown onto my house and windows so it looked dirty. All of this was part of the next step of his plan to make me look bad. He started telling people to look at my property and see how the new generation is handling it, also blaming me for the noise and painting a very bad image of me all over the neighborhood. Some knew me from when I was younger and still lived with my parents. Out of those, it was a mixed bag. Since I was a well-behaved yet loud and annoying teenager, he was telling everyone about starting an HOA because if not then, soon people like me would all own the properties and nobody would get any peace. Making it seem like an HOA would be able to keep people they did not want out of there. People like me based on the kind of reputation he made for me that I was not able to shake out of. They all knew him and the good side that he let people see, so when he labeled me as difficult, others just listened to what he had to say without getting to know me. The HOA got formed and he of course was in charge as the president. Everybody else on the board was handpicked by him. I did not know them all, but I knew that some were his friends, the same kind of sneaky person he was based on stories my dad had told me. After seeing so many stories on here about HOAs, I was just waiting for him to try and force me to join or fine me for stupid things, but that actually never happened. I think part of the problem with my neighbor is, while he is an a-hole, he also is not an idiot. That is why he was always so subtle with the things that he did to my family. All residents were allowed at the meetings, even if they were not part of the HOA. I figured that going might give me a heads up if he was trying to make a new rule or come after me for something else. Most of the meetings did not really amount to anything, and if I had to guess, it is how normal HOA meetings go. After a few months though, one was different. He was talking for over a week before that meeting, saying that he was going to announce a new project. He did not have any sketchy tone of voice like when he threatened me, but I felt really off about it anyway. I went and waited for an hour before he finally brought up his plan. He was talking about people complaining about the traffic and how long it takes to get from one of the neighborhood's main hub roads to the other one, and his solution would be building a brand new road to make it easier, claiming the road would also be a beautification project because the area around it would have flowers and shrubs. To be honest, it even sounded good to me until a question was asked about where this road would be. He pulled down a blueprint and it showed the road was going to be straight through my private property. I was angry and kept my cool until after the meeting to go and confront him. I told him that I never agreed to have any kind of road go through my property and I would not allow it. He told me that I did not have a choice because it was an easement. Then he just told me that I cannot stop progress. I was honestly at a loss of what I should do at this point. The meeting was a few days ago and no building has started yet. If it is an easement though, I don't have a course of action against him. Maybe I am the one who is overreacting to everything. It is only my home that the road seems to cut through, as the rest of the project seems to intentionally avoid houses. It would not cut through my house itself, but my house would now be basically on top of the road and I would hate the noise. I will probably come back and update if something major happens, but as of right now, I think I'm going to just be stuck, forced to move if I don't want the road going through my property. Edit, I want to thank everybody in the comments for giving me a ton of advice on what I can do next. I have a lot of good ideas now, and I don't feel as hopeless as I did when I first posted. I will make another post soon, as some things have already started to happen again between neighbor and myself. And one person in the comments said, "You're the one in the right here, neighbor is trying to get this kind of reaction from you. I don't think this would count as an easement, so I would ask a lawyer." OP responded, "Thanks, I did not think about asking a lawyer, honestly. I think I heard the word easement and just assumed everything was said and fine." Commenter number 2, "He cannot just make a road unless your property blocks somebody else's. You need to look into your local laws because he might be making an illegal road." OP then responded, "I'm going to look more into it and give an update when I decide what to do." Commenter number 3, "You're not overreacting to anything. If it were me, I would have started a fight during the meeting. Make sure to make notes about every single time he harasses or threatens you, no matter how small it is. It still counts as harassment." OP responded, "Thanks for the idea. I might even try recording my interactions with him from now on too." Commenter number 4, "This neighbor seems like a real a-hole. I think everybody else needs to see the type of person that he really is, and then he will dissolve this fast. His political friends will bail once people know the real him." And yeah guys, if you would be in this situation, what would you suggest OP to do? I think going to a lawyer first would definitely be the easiest route, and I'm not sure why OP didn't instantly do that. Anyway, if you enjoy long stories, please don't forget to like the video. It would be absolutely amazing if we can get to 1000 plus likes. Thank you so much. Either way, update number 1. It's been a few months since I made my original post about my neighbor, and a ton has happened in the meantime. As I mentioned in the first post, he started an HOA. He has also been enforcing a ton of really stupid rules and issuing a ton of fines to people that disagree with him. A lot of the neighbors were already on his side to begin with, but no, it seems like you either need to get on board and get fines almost every single day for something stupid. I never joined the HOA, but that does not stop my mailbox getting flooded with fines for things that I cannot even help. I got a fine a couple of weeks ago because my yard was apparently being too wet. After it rained for 2 days straight. I wish that the fines were the only update I had, but I really made this post because the construction of the road that he wants to build cutting through my property started. I had a lot of good advice from my last post, so when the construction crew came out to start, I showed them the property lines and that I did not approve of any digging on my yard. I was hoping maybe they would be following the law, but the foreman told me that I did not have any authority over the crew or the plans. They were working directly under the neighbor and the HOA, so I could only watch as they dug up my property. I went to speak to my neighbor and tried to reason with him and even explained to him that I looked into what an easement was and that what he was doing should not qualify, but he did not want to listen to me. I want those workers out of my property. You don't have the right to create a road going right through my home. Neighbor, there's an easement on your property, so we are able to do it. I even have the paperwork showing it. My property is not blocking anyone else's. The only easement that should exist is so the city can access the wires and the pipes. Neighbor, wow, looks like somebody knows how to use Google, huh? Maybe if you look past the first page, you would see that HOAs use easements like this all the time. And again, I have the paperwork and you have nothing. Well, let me see those papers. He then holds them up again, but refuses to let me actually read through them, which to me just seems very sketchy. Also, similar to before, he was telling me that I better stay out of it because he would just hate for an accident to happen. So he still loves his vague and veiled threats, and accordingly, I contacted a lawyer based off another good suggestion I got in my last post. I gave him the whole story of how he wanted my parents' land for years, and I had a feeling that he was just doing all of this to get the land. He told me that the plan was going to be challenging the validity of the easement and basically suing the HOA. I was also suing them for all of the fines they were sending me since I was not part of the HOA and they cannot force me to give them money or pay fines because of this. It took less than a day before they were countersuing me for interfering with development, since my lawsuit meant that construction was going to be stopped for a couple weeks until a decision was made by a judge about the whole thing. My lawyer was nice, but also practical, and warned me that this was not gonna be easy. My neighbor was powerful and he knew a lot of people, not to mention that he had the rest of the neighborhood on his side and was going to use all of that to make me look bad. I was preparing myself for maybe some hate mail or even mild vandalism, but not what he decided to do to me. The local news was at my door, asking me a ton of questions before I could even grasp what was going on. Turns out he went to the news and painted an entire story about me being a horrible person and greedy. According to him, I was trying to get money from him and using this road as an excuse. I tried to explain my side of the story to the news, but it didn't work as they were set on making it a story where I was a bad person. A lot of the story revolved around the fact that the road would have made kids getting to the school easier and safer. With me wanting to stop the road, I basically was saying that I wanted to put kids in danger and have them get hurt. It did not even make any sense, and they totally avoided the part of the story where the road was going through my property and me never agreeing to it. If you watched the news with no context, it made it sound like I was trying to stop a road from being built through like an empty lot or something. My lawyer told me that there really wasn't anything he could do about the news reports. If there was anybody around not already on neighbor's side with the whole thing, that news brought them over and left me a team of one. I decided that I wanted to do some additional research that might help in the long run. I was going through years upon years of survey reports and any other records I could think of with his name attached to it. More things are public record than people might think, and digging some dirt on him turned out not to be so hard. When his bratty kids became adults, it was Dad himself that helped them obtain land. Land that seemed to get paid for way below market value, always with some kind of issue surrounding it. He was clearly doing some shady land deals, lowballing people like he did with my dad, and probably threatening them when he did not get his way. If I was able to maybe contact the old landowners, I knew that they might have some interesting things to say about my neighbor. My lawyer, meanwhile, was able to find some inconsistencies in the easement paperwork after the court forced neighbor to hand it over to my lawyer to look through. Dates were wrong, and according to my lawyer, it seems like they had gotten easement paperwork about another property and then just edited it to say that it was mine. That was all just speculation at this point, but it was enough for a judge. A temporary injunction was filed forcing the construction to totally stop pending the legal challenge. Please understand that up until this point, a not insignificant amount of time had already passed, and a rather large part of the road had already been finished courtesy of my awful neighbor and his ridiculous, shady construction company that he either hired or owned himself. The court proceedings should have happened by now, but as of writing this post, they hadn't. Neighbor got it delayed 3 times already, using his influence and the people he knew. I don't know why yet, but he seems to want to keep pushing this thing as long as he can, despite me being the one sued for forcing a delay. Also, the harassment from him has still not stopped. I get almost daily letters from the HOA, either giving me a fine or just telling me that I am in violation of something. Almost all of them now talk about my property being unkept, referring to the dug-up area where the construction stopped. I'm saving everything and not paying anything. Yesterday I got a letter in the mail, but this time it was not labeled or anything, and I knew it was from neighbor based on what it said. It was a warning saying that if I knew what was good for me, I would drop the lawsuit. It scared me, but I think now I'm determined to fight even harder. Also, I want to thank everybody for the advice in my last post. I hope that the next time I'm writing, it will be to tell you all how the court went and how the HOA lost. A person in the comments said, "Good luck with everything, I'm pulling for you." OP, thanks for the support. Commenter, can't wait for the end of the saga, neighbor really needs to be taught a lesson. Another commenter said, "You can probably sue either the HOA or the neighbor directly, also for harassment and defamation from this news story." Update number 2 to the story. This is my 3rd post as part of a continuing story. I recommend going back and at least skimming the last 2 if you want to know what's going on. Anyway, I know I said this post was going to be the court decision and the end of things. I couldn't wait though, because there has been a major development in the story and I wanted to share it with everybody that might be waiting to hear. So while neighbor is still pushing the court proceedings, his behavior towards me was getting worse by the day. I was still getting everything I was before with the HOA fines that did not make sense, and also some mild vandalism. I actually installed cameras so I could catch him doing something, but he always sent somebody else so he would not get caught. I had so many eggs thrown at my house that you would think he owned a chicken coop. The worst thing was that now he was also making false complaints to the police about me. They kept getting called to my property with claims that I was doing illegal things that I wasn't. Of course, it was always anonymous, so he never ended up getting caught doing it. At one point, police came with guns drawn and scared the hell out of me. This was a claim that I was both heavily armed and also running a meth lab in my basement. The entire house got torn apart for them to find nothing. My lawyer told me that he would work on trying to get the 911 calls traced back to see if it was the neighbor, since false police calls were actually illegal. The worst part was that neighbor found out where I worked and was now also trying to get me fired. He called my boss saying a bunch of lies about me, the same type of things that he was telling the police. I spoke to my boss, who thankfully knew I was a good person and believed me. He told me that unless I was actually arrested and found guilty for anything, then I didn't have to worry about him firing me. I even had to change my phone number twice because he kept leaking it and having people call and say nasty things to and about me. I was keeping track of everything going on and getting copies of the police reports to have more evidence against neighbor for harassing me. My lawyer was working hard looking into now not only neighbor but the companies that I found out he owned, both involving real estate, but one of them seeming a lot more shady than the other. One of the companies did not seem to make any sales but was still generating apparent revenue. Extremely fishy, and after going through the courts he was able to gain access to more detailed bank records regarding the company. All of the income was being funneled in from neighbor's bank account but was being listed as revenue for property sales. According to my lawyer, it seemed like a case of money laundering. Long story short was, by the end of things, we were sure that neighbor was taking the HOA dues and fine money and putting it into his own bank account. He was then putting it into his own company to clean it before putting it back in his account. All of this was also done with the help of a forensic accountant, which I didn't even know was a thing until all of this. I tried to warn members that neighbor was doing this, but due to the reputation I now had because of him, nobody was believing a word that came out of my mouth. At least we got somebody in power to listen, because now a case against him was being built by the state attorney general. A fact which I know he will try and use his connections to get out of being in trouble for. I was kept in the loop by the accountant that every single exchange of money in that company was closely being watched, and every single case of it was being documented to hand over to the state for further examination. Neighbor did not know about all of this, so he was just being as reckless as ever and probably just digging a bigger hole for himself to try and crawl out of later. Well, the problem was that I shouldn't have said anything to the neighborhood about this when I did. All I did was draw attention to myself even more from the neighbor, and this is honestly where things started to get crazy. I didn't know the level of pull that neighbor had until I got notices from several local government agencies. I was now under investigation, me, for the same crap that he was lying to the police about because he wanted to hurt me. So I had my house not only searched, but basically torn up. They even came to my job and were interviewing co-workers and my boss, asking personal questions and implying to everybody that I was some kind of criminal when I had done nothing wrong. I nearly lost my house because of the entire thing due to not being able to access my money. My accounts were frozen as they considered me a flight risk and I couldn't be trusted with my own money apparently. Meaning my bills could not get paid and the only reason they did was my cousin lending me the money for it. The entire neighborhood and now half of my coworkers think that I am some kind of horrible person when really I did nothing wrong. Neighbor was driving me crazy, but I felt like the connections he had made everything worse. I was tempted on more than one occasion and still am at times to give up, to move far away and start over where nobody hates me and give up on all of this. Maybe I'm just too stubborn for my own good though, because I'm not only still here, but I'm still choosing to fight back. And by the way guys, just to quickly interject, if you would be in OP's shoes, would you have given up or would you still be fighting? Let me know in the comments, I'm really curious. Either way, since I knew that I was not gonna get anywhere just trying to convince people of what he was doing with the money they gave the HOA, I took a different approach. I decided to leak some of this financial information that we dug up on the neighbor to an investigative journalist. We legally could not give him a lot, but we were able to give him enough that he would get interested and start sniffing around. I also did this anonymously since I knew that my name showing up anywhere at this point would just discredit everything. My name really is that far into the mud at this point. I don't know what they did or how they did it, but a couple of weeks later, the HOA was in the news instead. The story in it talked about how HOA funds were being potentially stolen by the HOA president for his personal use, bringing up his two companies. It also stated that the journalist was able to find out there was an actual criminal case against a neighbor being worked on. After months of knowing this information and not being able to act on it, I felt like a weight was lifted. His corruption was now gonna be public knowledge and I was not connected to it for people to think I was trying to shift the focus away from me or something. HOA meetings were still in public and I was still going to them, but mainly just hiding in the back and not drawing attention. At the meeting after the newspaper, people seemed to be angry and wanted answers. Some of them were demanding the money back, while others wanted the HOA funds and bank statements to be public so they could see for themselves. They realized that they might be getting scammed for the first time since the whole thing started. It was also the first time that I saw the neighbor starting to not look so cool and confident like he did in the past. He was actually looking nervous, and I think that he knows everything might come crumbling down onto his head. I got a court date set once again, so hopefully this time he won't be able to push it. I might wait to see what happens with the federal stuff as well before I make another post, because I'm really hoping the next one will be the end of my nightmare. And now we got another update to the story, and it goes like this. And by the way, if you have watched until here and haven't subscribed yet, I would very much appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. So anyway, it has been a while since I made a post updating about everything that was going down between my neighbor and I. To think how far it came since the first post I made is amazing, and I thank everybody who's been reading and leaving me supportive comments. This is what I think is the last post on the matter, and probably some of you have been waiting for it. I finally got my day in court against a neighbor and also have information regarding his criminal case. To just pick up where I left off last time, the media started having a field day with the HOA scandal. Neighbor was refusing to release any HOA bank statements or anything showing the amount of funds the HOA was holding, which just made him look even guiltier about stealing it. The only claim he had was that HOA funds were being used for construction, going back to the halted road project that was going through my land. The one thing that I can say has improved since the media got involved is that my reputation has been slowly healing. People believe me now as if they woke up from a dream and saw what I'd been looking at the entire time, agreeing that a road through my yard was not right. I think people just like to be in whatever side looks like they might be winning personally. I decided that I wanted to do something very public to him before all the court stuff started. And that involved me once again going to an HOA meeting. I hijacked it basically and publicly confronted him about everything he has done since I knew him, showing people that I had evidence against him for fraud. I wanted to call him out in front of everybody so he could see what it felt like to be the one with a crappy reputation. Now I'm going to just get right into the court issues because I know that is what everybody has been waiting for since like the first or second post. Instead of just like one huge court case, it was broken up into a lot of several trips to court over a period of time. The good news is that he was not able to keep pushing the court case due to his connections. I guess once word got out what he might be doing, his friends in power wanted to disassociate with him as soon as they could. The first thing was the one that he kept pushing, which was my lawyer arguing to the courts that his paperwork claiming my property was an easement was illegitimate. He was forced to give his paperwork to the courts as well to examine, so it wasn't just my lawyer seeing an issue with it. In several places on it claiming when my property became an easement, the dates did not line up. They were off by years. He was trying to claim it was just a simple mistake and that my property was actually an easement. We were arguing not only that it wasn't an easement, but there was no justification for it to be an easement where the HOA could build a road. My property was not blocking another, and there was no just cause for a road to be built there. Taking that into consideration, plus the only evidence showing it was an easement had issues, there was finally a decision made. The HOA was not allowed to build a road there, and he was going to need to pay to return my property to its proper state from before he started to have it dug up. The paperwork itself was not showing enough that it could be considered fraud, so he didn't actually get in trouble for that like I assumed. What he did get in trouble for was the harassment against me. I had on file all the police calls, the things he said to me, the threats and everything else. I had months of documentation against him for that, along with defamation of character, since he was spreading the lies about me to everybody else, including my job. Those charges against him were nothing compared to the case the government had been making against him for months. Neighbor was not done though trying to use his influence and come off as being a good guy. He had tried to, in court, bribe witnesses but got caught before they could go through with it. He also tried to destroy evidence so it couldn't be used against him. But either the government or my own lawyer already preserved it so he couldn't do anything about it. He was going to get nailed by the court and for once he couldn't charm his way out of it. What I wish I could have seen was though that his office and his home both got raided by the police to secure anything that might be important. I hope he felt as scared as I did when he tried to get government agencies to raid me. His financial records were taken along with some hard drives he had filled with documents that incriminated himself. It turns out that we were right about what he was doing. He did have a real estate business that was mostly up to code and he got income from, despite the fact that he seemed to buy or sell properties at some very odd or suspicious prices. His second company was set up only a month before he started the HOA, and that company had no employees outside of himself and a bunch of names of people that didn't exist or didn't work for him. He was actually using names of HOA members as fill-in names, so the company looked legit until it was searched into. He was caught laundering the HOA money through his second business into his own pockets, and while not caught, I believe the pockets of his friends in power that had been helping him up until he got caught. He was charged and found guilty of so many things. I'm sure I will forget something here: harassment, money laundering, embezzlement, tax fraud, theft, misuse of police resources, all of that, and again, I'm sure that wasn't everything at the end of the day. He really broke a lot of laws during the entire process of things, and probably others years before he got caught probably wouldn't have gotten caught ever, or at least not so quickly, if he did not start up with me and try to build that stupid road. Also, despite his connections, these charges were too serious and too many to just let him off with a slap on the wrist. He was going to prison for a long time, and even then, there were messes to be cleaned up both literally and figuratively. Literally being my land, which thankfully got fixed. New grass was put down and it looked as if nobody had tried to turn it into a road to begin with. The rest was that the HOA members were not happy about this whole situation. The HOA owed people a ton of money back for dues and fines, and from what I heard they didn't have enough, so at the end of the day some people still ended up getting screwed over. I was just happy that he did lose everything at the end of the day he was proud of. His wealth that he gloated about was gone and ceased mostly. His reputation as being the best person around was gone, with people hating him more than they hated me at the peak of things, and his freedom as he was not going to see the outside of a prison for a long time. Once he does, I doubt he will come back here with his house gone and everybody knowing what he did. I don't think I had a moment of peace or calm in my life since my parents died, and he started this whole thing. Once he was gone though, my entire body untensed. He is gone and I can go back to a life that doesn't involve lawyers or being scared about what he might do next. I'm glad I stayed and fought back instead of running away like part of me wanted to. I want to thank everybody who left a comment and followed my journey. I know it was long, but part of what helped me the most was getting it off my chest and the support you all gave me. OP also made an edit to the story that we are gonna read now. Some people were asking me if I ever saw HOA members on my property again, and I realized I never explained the most satisfying part of this whole saga, which is how I legally banned HOA members from ever setting foot on my property again. After the neighbor was convicted and sentenced, I thought everything was over, but the remaining HOA board members, the few who were not complicit in his schemes, actually had the audacity to approach me about continuing the road project under new leadership. Can you believe that? Even after everything that happened, they still thought they could somehow claim access to my land. Well, that is when my lawyer suggested we go nuclear. And boy did we ever. First we filed for a comprehensive restraining order against the entire HOA board and some specific members that harassed me. Since they'd been complicit in the harassment campaign, all those bogus fines, the construction crew trespassing, etc., the judge was more than happy to grant it. The order specifically prohibits any HOA board member, contractor, or representative from coming within 100 feet of my property line, but we didn't stop there. My lawyer filed what is called a declaration of exclusive property rights with the county recorder's office. This legal document officially states that no easement exists on my property and that any future claims of easement rights are fraudulent. It is now part of the permanent property record, so if anyone ever tries this nonsense again, there's ironclad legal documentation proving that they have zero rights to my land. Furthermore, I installed professional-grade fencing around the entire perimeter of my property, with clearly visible "no trespassing, violators will be prosecuted" signs every 20 feet. But here's the kicker, I also added custom signs that specifically mentioned the restraining order and referenced the court case number. Anyone from the HOA who even thinks about stepping foot on my property can see exactly why they are legally prohibited from doing so. The absolute best part? When the HOA tried to claim they needed reasonable access to inspect the area where their fake road was supposed to go, probably looking for ways to sue me for damages, I was able to point to the restraining order and tell them to pound sand. My lawyer sent them a formal cease and desist letter reminding them that any attempt to access my property would result in immediate criminal charges for violating a court order. The new HOA president actually called me personally, trying to negotiate some kind of compromise. I told him the only compromise was that I would not press additional charges if they stayed away from my property permanently. And well, he hung up pretty quickly after that. It's now been 6 months since I banned the HOA from my property and the peace has been incredible. No more harassment, no more bogus fines, no more trespassing construction crews. My property is finally truly mine again. The dissolved HOA still owes most residents money and several are pursuing their own legal action. Meanwhile, I am living my best life on my fully protected HOA-free property. Sometimes standing your ground and fighting back really does pay off. Thanks again to everyone who supported me through this insane journey. Justice got served. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. If you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist on the left. Otherwise, I will see you again tomorrow.